there is no public knowledge of any offensive use of the E Squadron. Their most recent known missions were conducted in Libya, as there were accounts of E Squadron operators landing in the country and being captured not long after.
Right, y'all, welcome back to the Commodore channel. Okay, today we're checking out something from a YouTube channel that we haven't checked out before, but I gotta say, this video looks pretty cool. So the channel itself is called The Spy Network, and the video is all about the UK's E Squadron. Now, as far as I understand it, they also go by the increment. As far as I understand it, the closest US equivalent would probably be the CIA's SAD, or I guess it's called SAC now, Special Activities Center or something. So yeah, it's kind of like a special operations kind of unit that falls under MI6. I think, if I remember that correctly. Yeah, MI6 is kind of like the CIA equivalent. Yeah, it's a very interesting unit. Of course, there's not going to be a whole lot on the internet about it, but it is interesting to even approach the subject and try and do a YouTube video about it, because again, there's so much stuff that's probably up in the air. But yeah, hopefully it provides some good context or background as to what these guys have gotten up to pretty recently or even in the past. I'm not sure exactly how old the unit is. And of course, if you guys have anything to add that's not in the video itself, definitely throw it down below so we can learn a little bit more about this specific unit. But I'm excited. Let's get into it.
A unit held in so much secrecy and shadow, it could serve well in a James Bond movie. That's something that would be perfect to describe the UK's E Squadron, or the Increment as they are referred to. It is a secret unit within the SAS, which themselves only conduct highly covert clandestine operations and could be considered somewhat secret already.
Again, the fact that it falls under MI6 is a little bit interesting. It's kind of interesting how the lines blur when it comes to like an intelligence agency and then also special operations. Because I think of special operations, but like the special operations that fall under like an intelligence agency like MI6 or the CIA, those guys usually get into some pretty crazy stuff. And again, just by nature of the agency that they're falling under, they're going after what the agency requirements are, which are going to be different from the military and almost always like very high level sort of strategic missions. So yeah, the danger and precision with which they need to do operations is definitely going to need to be at a higher level.
Apparently, there is a unit within the 22nd SAS that has even more dangerous and covert missions assigned to them. The SAS also has the 21st and 23rd SAS. But these are the SAS Reserve, primarily staffed by civilian volunteers. Let's have a look at the organization of the 22nd SAS, and later on, dive into the E Squadron. The organization. So, the SAS, the Special Air Service, is the UK's finest. By now, most of us who are interested in...
that when they're doing the intro for the SAS, they show like these... I don't even know what these guys are. I'm guessing some type of police, but this dude just randomly has like an AK.
Anything regarding special forces have heard of the SAS, and they are one of the best.
Yeah, like
they are regarded as one of the toughest, successful, and feared SF units in the world, even by other SF units like Delta Force and DevGru. The SAS has around 400 to 600 operators, which is assumed a rough estimate, as we'll never know for sure. The regiment has 4 squadrons, A, B, D, and G squadrons. Each squadron is divided into 4 troops and a smaller headquarters section. Troops usually consist of 16 operators within these troops. They are divided into smaller units of 4 members. These smaller units are called patrols, and each SAS trooper always has a primary specialization within those patrols.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So I imagine you probably have like some medical dudes. You probably have like breachers. I don't know what else. When it comes to special operations, especially when they're working in like 4-man teams, I mean, you really just need to be like a jack of all trades at that point, which I think these guys basically are, because they have access to pretty much any training they could want, like advanced medical training, advanced driver training, even like, you know, certain details where the SAS guys aren't necessarily wearing like the full kit that they're normally used to wearing. You know, we've seen them kind of do some security detail as well. I'm not sure how those details are assigned when it comes to the different squadrons, if they may be trying to keep them with certain squadrons. But again, these guys are going to be extremely versatile because they have a bunch of training, and of course they're just very reliable people in general to kind of get into a position like that.
Namely signals, demolition, medic, or linguistic specialist, and forward air controller is also a specialization. The squadron's 4 troops all have each of the following focus areas. Boat troop. Specialists in maritime operations like diving, boarding ships, and everything that consists of a water element.
That's different from the SBS,
with
though?
the Specialized Boat Service, the SBS, which is the counterpart of the SAS. Underwater demolition, tactical maritime insertion and extraction, and covert infiltration by shallow water diving are their main objectives. Air troop.
Cool.
Experts in parachute deployments, and also called the free.
What? I want to know the story behind this. Jeez Louise. I mean, it's in pretty good condition if it crashed like that. I mean, it's on its belly at least, so that's good.
Fall troop. It is believed they are working in close cooperation with British Airways to covertly deploy into hostile environments. The way they do this is that cargo planes will fake an emergency and it goes off route into restricted airspace. This is, of course, a deliberate action to get the SAS operators as close as possible to their destinations. Once the operators jump out of the cargo hold, the emergency is cleared and their route can be resumed. Mobility troop.
Okay. I wonder if that's true.
The mobility troop is concerned with everything around the battlefield to enable the operators in the battlefield.
Hey, legend right
there.
there.
Their main disciplines are vehicle repairs, navigation, logistics, heavy support weapons handling, and basic mobility on the battlefield. Members of this troop.
This is like the OG SAS days in like the 1940s where they're like going through Egypt or whatever on these like Jeeps, these very jerry-rigged Jeeps with like the dual machine guns. I mean, looking at the vehicles, these look very historic. I'm not sure if they necessarily have these types of vehicles still, but
members of this troop will get expert training in vehicle repairment, driving, navigation, and vehicle handling. Snow scooters, trucks, motorcycles, or dune buggies can be handled in all sorts of terrain and hostile environments. The SAS operators rely on the proficiency of the mobility group to get them where they need to be and get them out of there in one piece.
It's nice having a good driver.
Mountain troop.
That's for sure.
The mountain troop is trained to excel in mountain warfare and thrive in arduous terrains. From the mountains of Afghanistan to the ice peaks of Norway, they are trained in some of the most proficient climbing schools all across Europe. As you would expect,
must be so cool.
The work of most of the squadrons remains unknown, but we can assume they've been very active in Afghanistan in their most recent deployments.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good skill to have.
So the structure of the SAS consists of 4 troops, but there is actually another covert and secretive unit that hasn't been highlighted here. This unit is referred to as the Increment, or E Squadron, within the SAS. There had been rumors for long about an MI6 Special Forces unit.
I'm not sure how many of these pictures we're actually seeing are from the SAS, but seeing the historic examples is kind of cool. This one, I don't know how old this one is, but jeez, look at that thing. It's like something you'd find on like a submarine.
Which was referred to as the Increment, which is where the E Squadron gets their name from. Both the SAS and the SBS have special detachments called the Revolutionary Warfare Wing. And within these detachments, the operators are hand-picked to be a part of the E Squadron. Although not really confirmed, it is believed that the seasoned Special Reconnaissance Regiment operators can be selected to join the unit as well. From the perspective of MI6, these operators all have a specific skill set, which is of interest for this type of work. To qualify for the E Squadron, operators must have served at least 5 years in one of the aforementioned units and reach the rank of sergeant. Once selected, they get...
I wonder how it works when it comes to promotions for them. I would imagine sergeant is not that hard to get, even like quickly. At least like our Green Berets, like they're usually, you know, picking up rank pretty quickly. Even in intelligence, if you're in like special intelligence roles, you'll kind of have different opportunities when it comes to promotion. So I imagine they have something similar, but you can imagine the amount of schools that they can already get. So being 5 years, I imagine that's like after training and whatnot. being 5 years in. The training up front is already going to be a lot, but in 5 years, these guys probably have a bunch of different specialties. So just to have that as like a prerequisite, like a minimum, goes to show it's probably pretty competitive just to get into this even smaller group.
The highest security vetting possible, and will be onboarded to get familiarized with the unit. Their military skills will be fine-tuned, and they follow extensive training in sabotage techniques, VIP protection skills, guerrilla warfare, and advanced insertion techniques such as high-altitude parachute jumps and covert infiltration from submarines. A good thing to be aware about is that from this point on, nothing of their existence should be related to their covert employer, and everything they do shouldn't raise any suspicion. They'll live under their alias name from then on.
Yeah, you'll have, like, with an organization like this, you're going to have a lot of other agencies just supporting them to make sure that they have that operational security. So it's like pretty much impossible to find who they are, what their affiliation is, what their true name is, and also like the separation between them and just other things that they might have done previously or their family. Yeah, it's a lot of work to kind of get rid of somebody's identity and also provide like enough backing to wherever they are. If somebody does start asking them weird questions, like they have a way to kind of get out of that or explain it where it's actually believable.
As part of their onboarding, they follow what is known as the Ionic. The Ionic stands for Intelligence Officer's New Entry Course and is directly tied to their work done for the Special Intelligence Service. Of course, it is possible with today's knowledge to completely sketch out their tactics, techniques, and procedures. But the increment has been confirmed on multiple occasions, and it is always described as a unit that consists of the absolute best personnel the UK Special Forces have to offer, conducting deep cover deployments in the most hazardous environments, in which capture would most certainly mean to be executed. We can safely assume that based on the requirements and the level of sophistication of this unit, they don't have big numbers in terms of personnel. It is also likely that they work together with the 18 Signals Regiment and the Joint Special Forces Aviation Wing in close.
Joint Special Forces Aviation Wing. Okay, I've heard of them, I think. The other signal element I'm not too familiar with. I imagine they just do very high-level sort of signals coverage when it comes to defensive and, of course, potentially offensive. Another thing that these guys probably have at their disposal is pretty much any sort of method of communication they want, any sort of environment that they're going to be working with. They have people who are on the ground to be able to support that, give them basically all of the, of course, the most secret forms of communication, and then operating in areas, you know, where they need to kind of react quickly. I'm sure they have a lot of connections pretty much everywhere they need to go to kind of facilitate that. And again, when you're kind of under the umbrella of MI6, that makes it even easier because, you know, you have these intelligence kind of officers who are already on the ground, who already have these connections. And, you know, these guys are probably going to get high priority when it comes to needing to leverage any of that.
Close cooperation, as well as with the UKN, a secretive signals intelligence unit, which is presumably the eyes and ears of the E Squadron. The SIS is the UK's Foreign Intelligence Service, or better known as MI6.
Yep, forgot they changed their name.
Carries out missions based on their intel. The SIS officers are active around the world in the most hostile environments, carrying out covert and clandestine missions, which would require special forces escorts.
Where's that footage from?
There is no public knowledge of any offensive use of the E Squadron. However, their most recent known missions were conducted in Libya, as there were accounts of E Squadron operators landing in the country and being captured not long after. After a political and diplomatic outcry, the operators were released.
How'd that
happen? It was a
happen?
very bad start for what was believed to be the downbringing of the Gaddafi regime, let alone the public attention it gained. Eventually, according to the reports, another report stated that they were going to be inserted into the Sahara in 2009, where a British citizen was taken hostage by Al-Qaeda. At the time, the mission was not given the go-ahead, and the citizen was killed. As you can imagine, this is all based on assumptions, since even MI6 and the SAS, which are held in secrecy themselves, do not give a clear view of the unit.
Yeah, and these guys are even different from what you kind of see with traditional intelligence officers under like an intelligence agency, because usually those guys have their own sort of backstopping and their own kind of covers developed for them, but it's usually not like in the position to where like if somebody did kind of find out or kind of ascertain, they'd usually just get like kicked out of the country, or they'd be like, you know, we see what you're doing, you're in the country for what you say was another reason, but we're not believing that, so you got to go. You know, usually you can have that option, but for these guys, when it's that secretive, and especially who they're kind of going against or, you know, kind of working against, yeah, I guess they might not necessarily have that option, especially since they're probably very closed off when it comes to communicating with certain people or being able to actually have more options at their disposal.
Cells do not give a clear view of the unit for obvious reasons. One thing is for sure, being in the E Squadron means you are the absolute best of the best the UK has to offer, conducting highly secretive and covert missions within the highest confidentiality levels. Information or missions directly linked to this unit will have immediate political and diplomatic repercussions, so there is a good reason for their secrecy. What do you think? Have you ever heard of this unit? It's one of these units that remind you of the real-life Jason Bourne-like operators, and it is probably the closest thing to it. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.
I mean, you always hear those comparisons like Jason Bourne or James Bond, but it's, of course, not that exciting. Of course, these guys are going to have a lot at their disposal, not necessarily the same kind of technology, but honestly, probably pretty close, you know, which is kind of scary to think about. I'm sure there's a lot of really interesting stuff that these guys get specifically before anybody else even sees it, maybe even like 10, 20 years later. But of course, when you have James Bond and he's kind of going around and he's just blasting a bunch of people, making a bunch of noise, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, what the heck? Who is at the center of all this commotion? So I imagine they do a pretty good job of not trying to sort of bring up any sort of alarms. And that's why it's nice to have like certain specialties, especially having like a linguist, being able to kind of pick people that will fit into the environment a little bit better, and also have those capabilities kind of internally allow you to really kind of just go under the wire and be self-sufficient and not necessarily need, even though they kind of fall under the umbrella of MI6 and they can leverage that stuff, I'm sure they get trained pretty well on just general intelligence tradecraft. So even if they do need to pick up on something, or if they need to have a meeting with someone in MI6, they can still do that a little bit more low key. But again, they're so autonomous and they're so capable of working without that sort of supports that I imagine, you know, it's not totally needed. But I'm curious what you guys think, especially when it comes to, like, again, these intelligence special forces units, because you'll have like Rangers, you'll have General Navy SEALs, not necessarily like DevGru, but people who are kind of, their missions are usually high value targets, raids, things of that nature. But again, when it comes to these more intelligence oriented organizations, they have a lot of resources just going into kind of erasing who they are, who their affiliation is. It goes a lot further past just general operational security. Now it's like, you know, we're wiping your entire background. There's a lot of effort into one specific person. And this complicates things further just in general in their personal life. If they're just trying to, you know, go meet with their family, go meet with their friends, I imagine you have someone in like the agency or organization who kind of has to run you through all this and do like a risk assessment to see, you know, how you can make this look natural or within your normal cover pattern of life. Yeah, very, very interesting to kind of analyze this. But yeah, pretty cool channel. Of course, I'll put the original video in the description. It looks like they have a lot of units. They've covered the ISA, they've covered the SAD, they've covered, yeah, the Rangers. Yeah, they've covered a lot of units. So I might have to check out some more videos on this channel. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. That is it for this one. I'll see y'all in the next one.